Ron Placone, how are you, mate?
Good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much for agreeing to be on my new little podcast thingy that I'm doing. Um, we these are strange times that we are in at the moment. You're over there in America,
Yeah.
and I suppose with you being in America, I mean, I want to what the Black Lives Matter movement. Um, Obviously, this all came to the fore a few weeks ago with the death of George Floyd, who Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have already forgotten their names, haven't they? They've
Yep.
already forgot his name. Is it still a big movement? Is there still lots of support behind it? What's the deal at the moment there, over there with the Black Lives Matter movement?
It's still going very strong. I mean, there are protests pretty much daily. And I mean, one of the consistent protests here in Los Angeles is right outside of City Hall in downtown. They're there every Wednesday, and other days as well. There was recently one of the big things that kind of hit the press in the US this week that was, and when I say hit the press, I mean people were talking about it on the blogosphere because a lot of this stuff the corporate media ignores. But there was a violin visual in Aurora, Colorado, because there was a gentleman named Elijah McClain who was a violin player who was murdered by police, because, and this happened in 2019, and it was just because, he was kind of an eccentric guy. He liked to sort of sing to himself, and, young black guy, and somebody called the cops saying that he seemed suspicious. All he was doing was walking home. One of his hobbies was he would play violin for the stray cats in the neighborhood to soothe them. So, very dangerous guy,
This
clearly.
sounds like somebody I would befriend, Ron.
Right. Oh yeah, he seems like just the coolest guy. And like there's this video footage of him. He was just a genuinely sweet person, and wouldn't harm a fly. The cops approach him. They scare him. He's scared, so he's kind of like getting a little like he's jittery and he's saying a lot of stuff like cuz he's scared. So they put him in this chokehold because, of course that's how you deal with a scared person. You put him in a chokehold for no reason. And then they ordered this drug for him. Like they ordered this like anesthesia or something. Like they ordered this drug for him, and the amount they ordered was like an amount meant for somebody twice his size.
What, the
So
police ordered the drug?
the police ordered it. They didn't administer it, but they ordered it. Like they ordered the medic who had shown up to like give him, the sedative drug. And so then it was administered, and it was meant for, this was a skinny guy, 23 years old. I think he weighed about a buck 40, and this was meant for someone who, the amount that he was given was meant
Yeah.
for someone who weighed close to 300 pounds. So he was brain dead by the time they got to the hospital. He was dead. So that's how they handled a scared kid who was just scared because police approached him for no reason. They kill him. And
I was watching Democracy Now earlier. Their updates through this coronavirus thing have been pretty good from what I've seen, and it's pretty much the best. I would have thought daily news update Democracy Now is in the US. I don't know how you feel about that, but it's shocking. Every single day that they're talking about another two, three instances of black people over there being killed or being slammed to the floor or being roughed up, or another instance of the police brutality. Is this like just systemic racism, or is it a system that's just failed, or what is it that's actually gone on here, Ron? Because I've been calling it racist and I've been calling it a systemic problem, but obviously you're over
yeah.
there and you know more than I do.
Well, both of those things are correct. And it is a systemic problem, and it goes back. I mean, it's connected to 400 years of institutionalized racism. And when you really strip it down and you think about, okay, well, what does it mean to have law and order in our lives? And what was the police actually here to do in the United States as we know it? Well, they're not here to serve and protect. They never really were. So this was an institutionalized, um, you know, institutionalized oppression basically was what they were there for in the first place.
Wasn't
So
it
when you have, huh?
the police? Didn't I read something where that the police were sort of came about in America to keep the slaves in line.
Right, exactly. And then over the years, you know, the system has allowed to deteriorate on more micro levels for various reasons. I mean, first of all, there was only one time, to my knowledge, where the police went on strike, and it was a long time ago. I believe it happened in Massachusetts, and they were basically asking for better pay, and they were asking for just kind of a better uh like a better kind of circumference of what it meant to be a police officer. They were basically saying like, hey, this is sort of like, what exactly are we supposed to be doing? Because when you break it down, the actual job itself is insane. And that whole movement was just kind of squashed out. So starting from then, and until now, it has increased. People don't become police officers because they want to serve and protect. They become police officers because they want to bash people's heads in, basically. And if you're one of the quote unquote good apples, and I'm using quotes here because it's a systemic problem, if you do have good intentions and you want to become a police officer, you get forced out, basically,
Yeah.
because it's systemically designed to brutalize people. It's inherently corrupt. And then another thing going on simultaneous with this is, we have a lot of, white supremacy movements in the United States. We have neo-Nazi movements in the United States. And I know England has that. I know Germany. I know everywhere else in the world has that too. But here, one of the particular things that has happened, especially over the course of the past 40 years, is a lot of people involved with these movements, they did what David Duke did, meaning they put on the suit and they blended in with regular society.
Hmm.
When you see a white supremacist or a neo-Nazi on the news, usually it's somebody with all the skinhead tattoos and the swastika on their arm, and they're just,
Easy to identify.
easy to identify, saying ridiculous stuff. But there's a lot of other folks who have the same ideology that they just blend in and you're not going to know about it. And what they try to do is they try to infiltrate the police, and they try to infiltrate the government, and they try to infiltrate positions of power. And the police, especially, are well targeted by these people because guess what? Here's an institution where you get to kill black people without any repercussion, where you pretty much have a license to kill and no one's going to stop you. You're going to get acquitted 99% of the time. So they've been infiltrating for years and years now, and we have found out over the years after Ferguson happened in 2014, that was another shooting of an innocent black person, murder of an innocent black person. In that case, it was a shooting, but in George Floyd's case, they just knelt on him till he died,
Yeah,
which
they're
is
just they
hard
only
to
knelt on
imagine
him.
when you take a step back and think about what that takes to kneel on a person until you kill them. But Ferguson revealed, it was actually anonymous who uncovered it, that there were tons of police officers that were bona fide KKK members, Ku Klux Klan's members, with badges and guns, who were police officers. So it's been happening for years now. It continues to happen. Even recently in New Mexico, they referred to there was this right wing militia at a protest. There's footage of the police referring to them as friendly militias,
Oh,
militia friendlies. In other words, saying like the right wing, they're with us basically. So, you know, and you can even go into other crimes. You know, it's amazing. Aurora, which I just told you about, where Elijah McClain, a young black kid who plays violin for Cats, the police don't know how to handle that guy. They kill him. Meanwhile, the gentleman who shot up the movie theater, the white guy who shot up the movie theater, that also happened in Aurora, Colorado. They apprehended him without harming a hair on his head. Shot up a movie theater. This
and
guy shot up
they
a movie
they
theater.
when they kill these people, did they? I mean, there's the Breonna Taylor incident, isn't there, where these people have broke into these police officers have broke into an apartment. And they shot her while it was they broke into the wrong apartment, shot her
Yes.
while she was killed her while she was sleeping, and then tried to blame it on her boyfriend.
Yeah. I mean that's pretty much what
And
went down there.
they haven't even been. Did I hear they haven't even been fired yet, or they've just been fired and they're not facing any,
I believe
manslaughter or anything like that?
I believe at least one of the people has been fired, but there have been no charges. There have been no arrests as of the recording of this.
I I was talking to my friend Nina Cross the other day about the bailout in 2008 one, and I was talking to her about the reason that they gave for bailing the bankers out instead of bailing out the people who were going to lose their homes was something called moral hazard. And they said there was moral hazard in that they couldn't bail out the people who couldn't afford to pay their homes anymore. But obviously, where was the moral hazard to bailing out the bankers? The bankers, there's no repercussions for them, and lo and behold, they're doing it again right now as we speak. There's no moral hazard for these police officers, is there, to do this?
No, I mean, yeah, like there's no, I mean, they can kind of just do what they want without any repercussions. And,
No.
and one of the things that we desperately need in this country to start solving this is like, I mean, I actually wrote a piece where I said, well, this is what I would do because a lot of people in the United States right now, they're saying we need to defund the police, we need to demilitarize the police, and a lot of people, myself being one of them, say we need to abolish the police and reinvent what it means to have law enforcement in
I'm
our
with
lives.
you.
And yeah,
I'm
and
with
well, and
you.
when you say these things, it's that is a tall order, and I understand that. But you know what's very crazy is the idea that we can continue down this insane path of destruction. This needs to stop, and it's a systemic problem. A systemic problem is not quote unquote a couple bad apples. First of all, everyone forgets the second part of that phrase when they make that
Yeah,
argument. The
ruins
second
the
part of that
bunch.
phrase spoils the bunch. Everyone forgets that part. So it's like it's just in the way I describe it, it's like, look, when you try to make the few bad apples quote unquote argument, that's basically like saying, hey, we have an E. coli outbreak and taking one shred of lettuce and being like, this one's fine. It's a systemic problem. You don't solve a systemic problem. So, you know, I wrote a thing that's saying like, this is what I would do. And, you know, when you say defund the police, you don't literally mean that doesn't literally mean that a police department has no funds whatsoever. What it does mean is that those funds are redistributed in an extensive way. And when you look at, you know, a city's budget, I mean, I'll use Los Angeles, for instance. You know, the police budget in Los Angeles is in the billions and it dwarfs everything else. I mean, you can see the graph and you'll see this huge line for the police budget. And then you'll see parks, education, social services paling in comparison to this. Well, defunding the police, you know, it evens all those graphs out. It puts more money into social services, more money into education, more money into the health and well-being of a community, more money into affordable housing, and it kind of reprioritizes what money the police department does have. So, you know, what that means is that you're not going to have these police departments because they are so militarized in the United States, Gordon, where it's like we have towns of 9,000 people where there are tanks.
Yeah.
The police department, which what are you going to do besides make a dumb decision on a Saturday night if you have a freaking tank and you're a town of 9,000? What the hell do you need it for? And
Target
then,
practice. You would
yeah,
definitely you go out and have fun with that on a weekend. You can see what they're doing.
drive into something. And yeah, and then we have you're allowed to use rubber bullets on citizens. You're allowed to use tear gas on citizens. We've seen that. I mean, Donald.
Irritants, Ron. I've got to stop you there. It's irritants. I've seen in the media. They're not calling it tear gas. They're calling it irritants. Same as torture isn't torture anymore. It's enhanced interrogation. Tear gas
Okay.
is irritants now. It's not chemical weapons at all. It's just irritants that make you a
Oh
little bit
gosh,
weepy.
I have not seen that. Oh
I promise
man.
you it's out there. I've seen it
Oh,
a
I
couple of
believe
times
you. I don't
already.
doubt you for a second. I believe you 110%. I have not seen that yet, but I'm glad you gave me a heads up
Chemical weapons,
because
they're calling irritants.
irritants.
I
Also
guarantee
now
you, if Assad was firing them off, they would be calling them something else. It'd be chlorine gas, wouldn't it, or sarin or something?
well, when you think about how often the United States, tries to, get conflict, instigate conflict around the world, at the behest of oil, which is what the United States does. A lot of it is like, well, they use chemical weapons against their own people. They did this. Well, here, it's happening here. I mean, the United States was pretty much put under martial law recently,
Hmm.
um, and Donald Trump just used chemical weapons or irritants, depending on who you ask, but use chemical weapons on American people for a photo op. Oh, and also on Twitter, call for the shooting of American
Yeah.
citizens. So this is, I mean, this is straight up militant martial law that we've been faced with because of these protests, and it's I think a lot of people they have reached their breaking point. But you still get a lot of propaganda from the media trying to hold up the status quo and trying to make it out like it's just these rioters or looters or one of the best ones is they make it out like it's just this band of anarchists. They always call it anarchists
Oh,
for some
mate, the
reason,
best.
which I don't know.
What
Like,
can
do
you
you know what
explain
an
to me?
anarchist is?
Explain to me what a radical socialist is, because I keep hearing it. Is this on Fox News? What's a radical socialist? Is that like an Oprah Winfrey that walks down the road going, "You get healthcare and you get free college"? And what's a radical socialist, Ron? And why should I be scared of them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like a radical socialist for you would just be somebody who's actually in the Labor Party, someone who
Yeah,
actually is the Jeremy Corbyn style of the Labor Party.
I don't know about
Um,
the Labour Party, mate. It's fallen to pieces.
no, I
It's-
know that. I know that. That's why I was quick to designate the Corbyn wing. The
I
Corbyn
don't, I
wing.
don't, I don't think there's any
Really, you think
progressives in the
Corbyn
Labour
is?
Party left in the Labour Party, mate. I really don't. Honestly,
You
I
think
really
Corbyn?
don't. The only one that was any good was Chris Williamson, and they got rid of him. Going back to the police, what do you think the answer is with the police? Do you think, like me, that the police, much like the court system, actually over here, the court system is fine in this. The police are handling 90% of their call outs, the police are handling, they shouldn't be handling. It should be
Right.
other people. It should be, especially in the case of, for instance, that violinist, it should be mental health people who go out. It's care in
Yes.
the community stuff, isn't it? Isn't that where really the funding needs to be, and let the police deal with the violent crime and the violent criminals?
So what I did, and I wrote this thing out. I won't go into like every single detail because it is long. But I've been tweeting the link out in case anyone wants to read it. The way I think we should do it, um, is we should have first of all, yes, what you're saying with a lot of collaboration between social workers and mental health professionals, that needs to happen immediately. Demilitarization needs to happen immediately. Defunding needs to happen immediately. And then we need to just abolish the idea of a police officer as we know it. Because when you really break down what the job is, it makes no sense. It's absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane that the same person who's expected to handle a live shooting is also the same person who will pull you over for a busted taillight or like it's just absolutely ridiculous. And then you have these officers who are not trained properly. I mean, it takes one of the fun statistics here in the US, there's more training to be a hairstylist or a barber than there is to be a police officer. And hey, I know, hey, cutting hair is a lot of work, and I don't, I love my hairstylist. She's amazing and she's great. But they shouldn't have police officers should have more training. I mean, that's
Yeah.
absolutely ridiculous. It's just a matter of like, so what I think we need to do is we need to, first of all, really reassess what the actual job itself is. And a police officer, as we know it, there's no reason for that job to exist. I think we should have designated types of officers that work in close proximity with social workers and mental health professionals. So the way I designated in the thing I wrote is we have peace officers, um, traffic enforcement, and combat officers. And the peace officers are just, yeah, when there's just sort of like a noise disturbance. Hey, there's this party down the street. They're really freaking loud. A peace officer goes. And that person, guess what? They don't have a gun. What are they going to need it for? What do they need? They don't need a gun. So they don't have one. They don't have any elaborate weaponry. Maybe they have like a nightstick or something just in case something gets out of
Mm.
hand. But that's all they have. Same with traffic enforcement. Your tail light's out. Why does the person who pulls you over for a broken tail light need a gun? But they don't. They don't. They don't need a gun, so they don't have one. Um, and that's kind of, and those people are, they deal with mental health professionals too. Like they will be escorted with a mental health professional or a social worker. Like getting back to the violin example, say someone calls, they're like, "Hey, there's this guy walking down the street. He seems a little erratic. I'm not really sure what the situation is." Well, in this situation, a peace officer would go look into that, and they would have a social worker with them or something like that in case maybe this person's lost, maybe this person, does have, a mental disability. Maybe they are, ill. And then they go, hey, how's it going? What's going on? And the person goes, oh, I just play violin for the cats and I'm walking home and I'm just an eccentric guy who likes to sing to myself. And they say, okay, you have a good night and you be safe. And that's the end of it.
And
And Elijah McClain is
he's
still
got a
alive and
support.
well.
Yeah, he's got a
Right.
support system there. They leave a card with him if he has any problems. He can call them.
Sure. Yeah, hey, you ever have any issues? Totally. And that's the way the world should be. And then, now with all that being said, in the scenario I made up where we have that third branch, which are combat officers, I do recognize the reality that in the United States, we do have a lot of violent crime. That's just the truth. And we have more violent crime than a lot of different countries. We have more violent crime than England. We have more violent crime than I think almost everywhere. I think we like being number one and stuff, Gordon. And here's another thing where I think we're number one or pretty damn close. So what you have for that situation, when there is a situation where say there is a live shooter, say there is like domestic violence where weapons have been used, an armed robbery, stuff like that. You have what I designate as combat officers, and these people are only called upon in those situations. Now, they're still accompanied by a mental health professional and a social worker when it's safe for those people. Like,
Yeah.
say it's like a hostage situation or something, they would have a mental health professional and a social worker with them, and then they would use force only if it's absolutely necessary. And these people, they're not going to respond to a traffic citation. They're not going to respond to a noise complaint. What are they doing while this is going on? They're training very extensively. And these people have, physical exams they need to pass. These people have very extensive, like they're trained extensively in hand-to-hand combat where they master something like jujitsu or karate. They're trained extensively in target. So, if they do need to use force, if they do need to shoot somebody, they know how to shoot to wound. And they're just trained, they're very heavily screened as well. Like, I mean, it's one of those things like we need more thorough screening of these officers. So, my big solution for that, we have a community elected board that oversees all this.
I
We
was
have a,
going to
we
ask
have
you
a
about this
board
because I
that
was
is,
going to
yeah,
ask you about this.
it needs to be community led. So the way I see it is we have an elected board, and how big or small that they're basically treated the same as a city council. So they're as big as like a city council in regards to how many members they would have. And they're elected, they can only run for up to 3 terms. They cannot have a spouse or family member in law enforcement. That'd be a conflict of interest. They can never have been in law enforcement themselves. That'd be a conflict of interest. Um, and they oversee a lot of the hiring, firing. Every officer needs to be approved simultaneously by them, unanimously by them. They need to conduct thorough screenings for all these people. Like they need to conduct for all these applicants, thorough screenings, background checks, mental health evaluations, making sure there's no significant like PTSD that could harm their ability to respond in a certain situation. And 2 years of training minimum for combat officers. It's 4 years of training. They also have to complete mental and physical exams annually, and again, the community leads it. And in the piece I wrote, there's all, if any abuse of power is reviewed by the board and they determine whether or not that person keeps their job. They determine, if further charges are pursued, that person is treated like a regular citizen in the court of law. Regardless of what a court of law decides, they can still lose their job if the board says they lose their job. The reason I need to have that particular in there, Gordon, is because here in the U.S., and I don't know if this is the same in England, but here in the U.S., our self-defense laws are very, very broad. Like they're very like some of the things where it would technically be considered self-defense and the person wouldn't go to jail. It can be very widely defined, especially in certain states. Like in Florida, for instance, they have this a law called Stand Your Ground law. So sometimes it's like somebody really acted completely out of line and used very excessive force, but the court of law still designated it self-defense. Well, that officer could still lose their job under this model. So that's kind of what I think needs to happen in a nutshell. A community board with community-led policing and community oversight, and these are elected positions that are salaried full-time jobs.
Yeah.
Breaking up what the officers actually do, what the job of a police officer is, so that a police officer as we know it ceases to exist because there's no reason for it to exist. And better training that is way longer, way more extensive. And it's not like you just pass one test and then you're good for life. You have to continue to meet a certain threshold, especially if you're a combat officer who deals with, situations that hopefully never arise. I mean, in this model, hopefully there are combat officers in different parts of the country that never ever are called into a situation because it never happens throughout their career. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But you have to meet a certain physical threshold to be able to stay in that designation. And if you don't meet it, you can become a peace officer or traffic enforcement. You can kind of like switch around. So that's, some of the things I think we could do to have reasonable law and order in a society. Because, I certainly understand that, I don't entertain the fantasy that we can just have no rules in a society and people can just do whatever the hell they
Yeah.
want. I wish we could live in that world, but I know that we can't. But it'd be nice if we had law enforcement that actually serves and protects.